"Come to the ball with me," the ranch owner told his Apache maid. She said, "Me, but I'm not your wife." The ranch sat far from the busy towns, stretched wide under an endless sky. Dry wind moved gently across the land, carrying the smell of grass, dust, and animals. Every morning before the sun fully rose, the ranch was already awake. Horses stamped their hooves, cattle shifted in the fields, and workers moved quietly, used to the long routine of hard days. The owner of the ranch was a man in his late 30s. He was known by many as strict, quiet, and fair. He did not speak more than needed, but when he did, people listened. The land had been in his family for generations. His father had raised him here, teaching him that land only respected those who respected it back. When his father passed away, the ranch became his responsibility overnight. Since then, his life had become nothing but work, order, and silence. He woke every day before dawn. He checked the fences, the animals, the water lines. He kept records, settled disputes, and made sure every worker was paid on time. He never complained. He never explained himself. People admired him, but they did not know him. No one ever saw him laugh loudly or show weakness. At night, his house remained dark and quiet, with only a single lamp burning late as he worked at his desk. What most people did not notice was how empty the house felt. On the same ranch worked a young Apache woman. She had arrived 2 years earlier, carrying only a small bag and a quiet strength that did not ask for attention. Life had not been gentle with her. After losing her family support, she had learned early that survival required patience, silence, and dignity. She did not speak of her past, and no one asked. On the ranch, she worked as a maid, cleaning the main house, washing clothes, preparing meals, and keeping everything in order. She worked harder than anyone expected. She never arrived late. She never left tasks unfinished. Her movements were careful, respectful, and steady. Many people barely noticed her presence, but the house always felt calmer when she was there. She spoke softly and only when needed. When spoken to harshly by others, she answered with calm. When ignored, she accepted it without bitterness. She understood her place in the world, or at least, she believed she did. The ranch owner noticed her in small ways at first. He noticed that his coffee was always ready at the same time each morning. He noticed that his papers were neatly arranged without him asking. He noticed that his house, once cold and lifeless, now felt quietly warm. At first, he assumed this was just good work. But slowly, he realized it was more than that. She paid attention. She noticed when he returned tired and made his meals lighter. She noticed when his boots were worn and repaired them carefully. She noticed his moods without him speaking. And she never crossed a line, never asked questions, never assumed familiarity. This made him uneasy. Not because he disliked it, but because it made him feel seen. Sometimes when he entered a room, he would pause without realizing it just to observe her. She moved with purpose, her face calm, her eyes focused. There was no fear in her, only awareness. She did not shrink, but she also did not challenge. It was a balance he rarely saw. He reminded himself that she was his employee, nothing more. Days passed into weeks, weeks into months. Seasons changed. Dust storms came and went. Rain arrived late one year and everyone felt the pressure. The ranch owner carried that pressure silently. At night, he sat alone, listening to the wind, wondering when his life had become so narrow. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It was sealed with an elegant mark, the paper thick and formal. He opened it carefully. Inside was an invitation to a grand social ball in the city. Ranch owners, businessmen, officials, and their families would attend. It was not optional. His presence was expected. He frowned. He had avoided such gatherings for years. They required conversation, appearances, and questions he did not wish to answer. Questions about his personal life, about why he was still unmarried, about when he planned to settle down. He folded the letter and placed it on his desk. He told himself he would ignore it, but over the next days the thought stayed with him. He knew that refusing again would raise eyebrows. Business relationships depended on presence. Respect depended on being seen. One evening, after a long day, he returned to the house later than usual. The sky was dark, the stars faint. Inside, a single lamp glowed softly. The maid was finishing her work, quietly wiping the table. He paused in the doorway. She noticed him immediately and stepped aside respectfully. "Sir," she said softly. He nodded. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched heavier than usual. He looked at the table, the room, the order she maintained. Then, without planning to, he spoke. "There is an event," he said. She waited. "A ball," he added. She nodded again, unsure why he was telling her this. He hesitated. Words that came easily in business now felt strange. His mind searched for logic, for reason. "I need to attend," he said. "It requires a companion." Her hand paused mid-motion. Slowly she looked up at him, confusion flickering across her calm expression. He met her eyes. Something in his chest tightened. "I want you to come with me." The words hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. She stared at him, certain she had misunderstood. Her breath caught slightly, but she remained composed. "Sir?" she asked carefully. He repeated himself more firmly this time, though his voice remained low. "Come to the ball with me." Her face went pale. Not with excitement, but with shock. For a moment she said nothing. Thoughts raced through her mind. The world outside the ranch was not kind. Public spaces judged without mercy. She knew how people looked at women like her. She knew the stories, the whispers, the pain that followed standing where she did not belong. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling just enough to reveal the storm beneath. "Me?" she asked. "But I am not your wife." The room felt suddenly too small. He did not answer immediately. He did not know how. In her mind, fear and disbelief mixed. She wondered if this was a test, a misunderstanding, or a mistake that would cost her everything. She lowered her eyes, preparing herself for correction, for embarrassment. But he did not laugh. He did not dismiss her. Instead, he stood there, silent, as if realizing that this moment had already changed something he could not undo. Outside, the wind brushed against the windows, carrying the sound of a world that would soon demand answers. And neither of them yet knew how much courage it would take to give one. The words she had spoken stayed in the air long after her voice faded. "I am not your wife." They were not said with anger or pride, but with fear and truth. She stood very still, her hands folded in front of her, waiting for him to correct himself, waiting for him to say it had been a mistake. The ranch owner felt something heavy settle in his chest. He had asked the question without fully thinking through the weight of it. Now he saw it clearly in her eyes. This was not a simple invitation. For her, it was a risk, a dangerous one. "I know," he said quietly. She looked up at him, surprised. She had expected him to step back, to apologize, to laugh it off. Instead, his face was serious, almost troubled. "I know you are not," he continued. "I would not ask if I did not believe you could stand beside me." Her heart began to beat faster. She did not want it to. Hope was a thing she had learned to keep buried. Hope had a way of hurting people like her. "Sir," she said carefully, choosing each word, "people will talk." "They already do," he replied. That made her pause. He took a step forward, then stopped, keeping a respectful distance. "They talk about me, about why I live alone, about why my house is quiet. They talk about the ranch, about my choices. I have lived with that for years." She swallowed. "It is not the same." He knew she was right. "They will not look at you the way they look at me," she continued. "They will judge me before I speak. They will see my work clothes even if I wear silk. They will see where I come from, no matter how I stand." Her voice was calm, but each word carried the weight of lived experience. He listened, truly listened. For the first time, he realized how little he understood about the daily courage it took for her just to exist. "I do not want to embarrass you," she said, "and I do not want to embarrass myself." Silence fell between them again. Finally, he spoke. "I would never place you in danger." She almost laughed at that, but stopped herself. You cannot control the world outside this ranch. No, he admitted, but I can control how I treat you. That mattered more than he knew. She turned away slightly, staring at the table she had just cleaned. The ranch had been her shelter, not perfect, not easy, but safe. The invitation threatened that balance. If I say yes, she said slowly, nothing will be the same after. He nodded. I am aware. People will look at me differently here, she added. The workers, the neighbors. I will handle that, he said. She shook her head. You cannot carry this alone. Her honesty unsettled him. He had carried everything alone for so long that he had forgotten what it meant to share a burden. I need time, she said finally. Of course, he replied. I would not expect an answer now. She nodded once and excused herself, leaving the room with quiet grace. As she walked away, her steps felt heavier than usual. In her small room that night, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her hands. She thought of her past, of places where she had not been welcome, of moments where standing out had meant pain. She had learned to survive by blending in, by being invisible. And now, a man with power and position had asked her to stand in the brightest room imaginable. She lay awake long after the house fell silent. The next morning, the ranch moved as it always did. The sun rose, the animals stirred, the workers went about their tasks. On the surface, nothing had changed, but inside both of them, everything felt different. She avoided him that day, not out of disrespect, but out of confusion. He noticed but did not press her. He spent the day riding the property, thinking more than usual. He asked himself hard questions. Why had he chosen her? Was it convenience, loneliness, or something deeper he had refused to name? He remembered moments he had dismissed before. How he felt calmer when she was nearby. How the house no longer felt like a building but a home. How he trusted her without ever deciding to. By evening, his mind was clearer but his heart was heavier. That night, she knocked softly on his office door. Come in, he said. She stepped inside, her posture straight, her expression resolved. I have thought about your request, she said. He stood, giving her his full attention. I am afraid, she admitted. But I am also tired of living as if fear is the only thing allowed to guide me. His breath caught. I will go, she said, but not as a favor, not as something hidden. I would never hide you, he said immediately. She held up a hand gently. Then there must be understanding. I will walk beside you, not behind you. If I feel disrespected, I will leave. If I feel used, I will leave. He nodded without hesitation. Agreed. And after the ball, she continued, you will not pretend nothing happened. Whatever follows, we face it honestly. He looked at her with something close to awe. You have my word. For the first time since she arrived at the ranch, she allowed herself a small, uncertain smile. The days leading up to the event passed slowly. Preparations were made quietly. A dress was ordered from the city, simple but elegant. When it arrived, she touched the fabric with disbelief. No one had ever bought something like this for her before. She practiced walking in different shoes, adjusting to the unfamiliar feeling. She reminded herself to breathe. The ranch owner watched from a distance, careful not to interfere, careful not to overstep. He felt a strange mix of pride and fear, pride in her strength, fear of what the world might try to take from her. The night before the ball, a storm rolled in. Rain fell hard against the land, soaking the dust, cooling the air. She stood by her window, watching it fall, thinking of change. Rain always meant change on the ranch. Sometimes it brought relief, sometimes damage. She whispered a quiet prayer, not for protection but for courage. Elsewhere in the house, the ranch owner sat awake, staring at the invitation once more. He understood now that this was not just about one night. It was about a choice, one he could no longer avoid. As the storm passed and the stars returned, both of them lay awake, knowing that the next evening would place them under lights brighter than they had ever faced. And neither knew exactly who they would be when the night was over. The day of the ball arrived slower than expected, as if time itself was careful about moving forward. Morning light spread across the ranch, soft and pale. The air felt different, heavy with something unspoken. The workers went about their usual duties, but there was a quiet curiosity among them. They knew something was happening, even if they did not know exactly what. She woke early, earlier than usual. Sleep had come in short pieces, broken by thoughts and worries. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long moment, breathing slowly, reminding herself that fear did not mean weakness. It meant the moment mattered. She washed carefully, brushed her hair, and dressed in simple clothes for the morning work. Everything felt ordinary, but her heart knew it was not. Every sound seemed louder. Every step felt heavier. The ranch owner also woke early. He stood by the window of his room, looking out at the land that had shaped his entire life. He had faced droughts, losses, and hard choices before, but this felt different. This was not about land or money. This was about people, about courage, about standing still while the world judged. They barely spoke that day. Not because they were angry or distant, but because words felt too fragile. A wrong one could break the calm they both needed. As afternoon faded, preparations began quietly. A carriage arrived from the city. The dress was laid out carefully in her room. She stared at it for a long time before touching it. The fabric was smooth beneath her fingers, cool and unfamiliar. It was not loud or shining. It was simple, graceful, and honest, much like she was. She dressed slowly, hands steady despite her racing thoughts. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Not because she looked like someone else, but because she finally looked like someone fully seen. Her hair was neatly arranged, her posture straight. She looked like a woman who belonged in her own skin. Still, doubt whispered. She closed her eyes for a moment and remembered her promise to herself. She would walk beside him, not behind, not hidden. Down the hall, the ranch owner dressed with the same care he gave to every serious task. His suit was dark and well-fitted, but it felt strange, like armor he had not worn in years. He adjusted his collar and stared at his reflection, wondering when his life had shifted so quietly. When he stepped into the main room, she was already there. He stopped. For a second, he forgot where he was. She stood near the window, light falling softly across her face. She did not look like a maid. She did not look like something borrowed. She looked like herself, fully and proudly present. "You look," he began, then paused, unsure how to finish. "Different," she offered gently. "No," he said, "you look right." She met his eyes, searching for anything that felt false. She found none. The journey to the city passed in near silence. The road stretched ahead, lined with trees and fading light. She watched the land change as they traveled, open fields giving way to buildings and stone streets. With every mile, her heart beat faster. As they arrived, lights filled the night. Music drifted through the air. The building stood tall and bright, its doors open wide. Carriages lined the street and voices blended together in laughter and conversation. The moment she stepped down from the carriage, she felt it. Eyes, they turned, they lingered, some curious, some surprised, some unkind. She felt her shoulders tense, but then she remembered her promise. She lifted her chin and took a steady breath. The ranch owner stepped beside her, offering his arm without a word. She took it, not because she needed support, but because she chose partnership. Inside, the room was alive with movement. Music filled the space, dresses flowed, and conversations layered over one another. For a brief moment, she felt overwhelmed, like she might disappear under the weight of it all. Then someone approached. A woman greeted the ranch owner warmly, then turned to her. There was a pause, a quick glance, a moment of judgment hanging in the air. "This is my guest," he said calmly, "not my maid. Not my help, just that." The woman nodded slowly, clearly unsure what to say, then smiled politely. "Welcome," she said. It was a small moment, but it mattered. As the evening continued, whispers followed them. She heard fragments as they passed, questions, assumptions. She did not let them sink in. Instead, she focused on her breathing, on the warmth of the room, on the steady presence beside her. Then something unexpected happened. People began to speak to her, at first cautiously. A simple question, a polite comment. She answered calmly, thoughtfully. She spoke about the land, about work, about life in a way that surprised them. She did not try to impress. She did not try to shrink. The ranch owner watched as the room slowly changed its tone. Where there had been judgment, there was now curiosity. Where there had been silence, there was conversation. He realized then that he had never brought her there to protect her. She did not need that. She was standing strong on her own. At one point, music shifted and couples moved toward the center of the room. He turned to her, uncertain. "Would you like to?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. They moved together, careful at first, then more naturally. She followed the rhythm easily, as if the music understood her better than she understood herself. For a few moments the world faded. There were no stares, no whispers, just movement and sound. When the music ended, there was polite applause. She felt her cheeks warm, but her heart felt lighter. As the night went on, she realized something important. No one had laughed. No one had turned her away. Some had judged, yes, but many had listened, and that was enough. Near the end of the evening, she stepped outside onto a quiet balcony to catch her breath. The city lights stretched below, glowing softly. The night air cooled her skin. The ranch owner joined her. "You did not have to stay," he said gently. "I wanted to," she replied. He leaned against the railing, looking out. "I think tonight changed more than I expected," she nodded. "Me too." They stood in silence, comfortable and thoughtful. Inside, the music played on. Outside, the world felt still. She knew that when they returned to the ranch, things would not be the same. People would talk. Questions would come. Choices would need to be made. But as she looked out at the lights, she did not feel fear. She felt ready. And beside her, the ranch owner understood that the quiet life he had built was no longer enough. He did not want to go back to shadows. He wanted truth. And as they turned back toward the glowing hall, both knew that the night had only begun to reveal what courage truly demanded. The return journey to the ranch felt quieter than the trip to the city. The lights faded behind them, replaced by long roads and open land. The night air was cool, carrying the familiar scent of earth and grass. She sat upright, hands folded in her lap, replaying moments from the evening in her mind. Not the stares, not the whispers, but the calm she had found inside herself. The ranch owner kept his eyes on the road. He felt tired, but not in the way that followed a long day of work. This tiredness came from thinking too much, from seeing his life more clearly than ever before. He knew that when the sun rose, the ranch would still be there, the animals would still need care, and the workers would still expect direction. But something inside him had shifted, and there was no simple way to return it to where it had been. When they arrived, the house stood quiet and dark. He stepped down first and offered his hand to help her from the carriage. She accepted it, steady and composed. They stood for a moment under the stars, unsure how to move forward. "Thank you," she said softly. "For keeping your word," he nodded. "Thank you for trusting me." They parted then, each retreating to their own space, both aware that the distance between them felt different now. Not wider, not smaller, just changed. Sleep did not come easily to either of them. She lay awake, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch at night. The walls felt closer than before. She wondered what the workers would say in the morning. She wondered if she had been foolish to step into a world that did not belong to her. Then she remembered how she had stood tall, how she had spoken without apology. She reminded herself that belonging was not something granted by others. It was something claimed. The next morning arrived bright and early. The ranch came alive as it always did, but eyes followed her more closely now. Whispers moved through the air like dust. She felt them, but she did not flinch. Some workers greeted her as usual. Others avoided her gaze. A few looked at her with curiosity that bordered on respect. She continued her duties calmly, refusing to let the noise inside others disturb the peace she had earned. The ranch owner noticed the shift as well. He heard fragments of conversation stop when he entered a room. He saw questions forming behind polite expressions. He did not address them. He had learned long ago that silence could be a form of strength. By midday, a visitor arrived, a business associate from the city, someone who had attended the ball. He greeted the ranch owner warmly, then glanced around the house with interest. "I did not expect to see you return so quickly," the man said casually. "The evening was memorable." "It was," the ranch owner replied. The man hesitated. "People are talking." "I assumed they would," he said calmly. The man studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Just be careful. The world is not kind to those who challenge its habits." After the visitor left, the ranch owner sat alone in his office for a long time. He understood the warning. He also understood that choosing safety over truth would cost him something far greater. That evening she knocked softly on his door again. "Come in," he said. She entered, standing straight, her expression serious. "I need to speak with you." He gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing. "I will not stay if I become a burden," she said plainly. "I will not stay if my presence harms the ranch or your work." He stood. "You are not a burden." "Others may see it that way," she replied, "and I cannot ask you to carry consequences meant for me." He stepped closer, careful to keep his voice steady. "You are not a consequence. You are a choice." Her breath caught. She looked away, struggling to hold on to her calm. "I have spent my life being careful," she said. "Careful where I stand, careful how I speak, careful not to want too much. One night should not undo that." "It does not have to," he said. "But it can open a door." She looked back at him then, searching for certainty. "And if that door leads to loss, then we face it honestly," he replied. "Together if you choose." She closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. "I need time, not to hide but to decide." "You have it," he said. Days passed with tension hanging just beneath the surface. The ranch continued to run, but change moved quietly through it. Some workers tested boundaries. Some grew more respectful. A few left, uncomfortable with what they saw as a shift in order. She remained steady through it all. She did not argue. She did not explain herself. She let her work speak as it always had. One afternoon, she overheard a conversation near the stables. Words meant to wound, spoken carelessly. For a moment, old fear rose inside her. The urge to retreat, to disappear, pressed hard. Then she remembered the ballroom, the lights, the calm she had found. She stepped forward and spoke, not loudly but clearly. She set boundaries. She demanded respect. The silence that followed felt powerful. That night the ranch owner heard what had happened. He felt pride rise in his chest, followed by worry. He knew she was strong, but strength did not make one untouched. He found her sitting outside, watching the sunset paint the land in gold and red. "You did not have to handle that alone," he said gently. "I needed to," she replied. "I needed to know I could." He sat beside her, leaving space between them. "I do not want you to leave because of others. I do not want to leave because of fear," she said. They sat together until the sky darkened. No promises were made, no decisions spoken, but something solid formed in the quiet. Later that week, a letter arrived from the city, an invitation to another gathering, smaller, more private, a test perhaps. He read it, then folded it carefully. He did not decide immediately. That night he placed the letter on the table between them. "If I go," he said, "I would want you beside me, but I will not ask again unless you are certain." She looked at the letter, then at him. The ranch, the land, the life she had built all stood behind her. The unknown waited ahead. She took a slow breath. "I am tired of living only in places where I am allowed," she said. He nodded. "So am I." The choice was not fully made, but the direction was clear. Outside, the wind moved through the fields, steady and patient. The ranch had weathered many storms before. This one they would face with open eyes. The days that followed felt like the calm before a final decision. The ranch continued its steady rhythm, but beneath it ran a current of expectation. Everyone sensed that something important was coming, even if no one said it aloud. The land itself seemed to wait, stretching wide and patient under the sky. She rose early each morning, as she always had. She worked with care, keeping her routine steady. But inside, she was changing. The fear that once guided every step had begun to loosen its hold. It had not disappeared, but it no longer ruled her. She thought often about her life before the ranch, about how she had learned to stay quiet to survive, about how dignity for her had always meant endurance. But now she was learning that dignity could also mean choice. The ranch owner watched her quietly, careful not to push, careful not to assume. He had spent his life believing leadership meant distance and control. Now he understood that true responsibility also meant courage. Not the loud kind, but the steady kind that held firm when the world pressed back. One morning, a group of local leaders arrived unexpectedly. They had heard the talk. They came with polite smiles and careful words, asking questions that were not really questions at all. They spoke of tradition, reputation, and expectations. The ranch owner listened patiently. When they finished, he spoke calmly. "My ranch is run with fairness," he said. "Anyone who works here with honesty and respect is valued." There was a pause. "And my personal life," he added, "is not open for approval." The visitors exchanged looks. Some nodded understanding, others looked unsettled, but none argued. Word spread quickly. Some neighbors withdrew, others surprised everyone with quiet support. The ranch did not fall apart. The land did not turn against him. Business slowed slightly, then steadied again. Life went on. She watched all of this from a distance, feeling both grateful and uneasy. She knew he was paying a price for standing firm, and she did not want to be the reason his life grew harder. One evening, she packed a small bag, not because she had decided to leave, but because she needed to know she could. The bag sat by her door as a reminder that staying was a choice, not a trap. That night, she asked him to walk with her. They moved slowly across the fields as the sun dipped low. The sky burned with color, then softened into blue. Crickets began their quiet song. "I need to speak honestly," she said. "So do I," he replied. She stopped walking and faced him. "I will not stay where I am tolerated instead of respected. I will not live as a secret or a symbol." He met her gaze without flinching. "I would never ask you to." "And I cannot be what others expect you to have," she continued. "I am not a solution, I am not a statement." "You are a person," he said, "and you matter." She nodded, feeling emotion rise. "If I stay, it will be as myself, fully. If that costs you things, you must understand what you are choosing." He took a breath. "I have lived carefully for a long time, carefully enough that my life became small. I do not want that anymore." Silence settled between them, full but not heavy. "I choose you," he said. "Not as a role, not as an idea, but as an equal." Her chest tightened. She had waited her whole life to hear words like that spoken without conditions. "I choose myself," she replied softly, "and if walking beside you allows that, then I will stay." They did not touch. They did not need to. The decision itself felt powerful enough. In the weeks that followed, changes became visible. She no longer worked only in the shadows of the house. Her responsibilities shifted, growing with her confidence. She was consulted, listened to, respected. Some resisted, others adapted. The ranch became a quieter, steadier place. They attended the smaller gathering together, just as they had discussed. It was not easy, but it was honest. People saw them not as a rumor, but as two grounded individuals who stood without apology. She spoke when spoken to, she held her head high, she left when she felt tired. No one questioned her right to be there. When they returned home that night, there was no doubt left in either of them. Months passed. Seasons changed. The land healed from old dryness. The ranch grew stronger, not weaker. Those who stayed learned new ways of respect. Those who could not accept it left. She planted a small garden near the house, something she had never dared before. Watching things grow under her care felt symbolic. life responding to patience and truth. One afternoon, as they sat together watching the fields, she spoke quietly. "I used to believe that survival was enough." He nodded. "So did I, but now," she said, "I believe life should be more than surviving." He looked at her, warmth in his eyes. "I agree." There was no dramatic moment, no announcement made to the world, just a steady building of trust day by day. She no longer kept her bag packed. The ranch became known not just for its land but for its fairness. People spoke of it with respect, quiet respect, the kind that lasts, and she, once invisible, stood rooted in a life she had chosen, not because someone allowed her to, but because she claimed it. And beside her stood a man who finally understood that real strength was not about control or approval, but about standing openly in the truth, no matter the cost. Together, they did not change the whole world, but they changed their own, and that was enough.